What's up, guys? Matt here, coming at you again with the Pandaxial. This is the Pandaxial build, the Axial truck with the Panda axles. So going to talk a little bit about, we're going to try to get rid of some of this slop in this drivetrain here. Get a little more light in here. So you'll see, if you watch these drive shafts, how much play there is in here before this thing will take off. So watch this. See how much it turns before we engage the wheels. So there's a lot of slack in there. And a lot of that is because there's bushings in here, and from my understanding there's no bearing in there. So like, we're going to put this SCX24 diff cover on here with the bearing, and hopefully that's going to help a little bit. So we're going to pull this apart and get started. I already took the servo arm loose because we're going to have to flip the servo. While we're doing this, we're going to flip the steering length and remove it up to the upper part here, and get this swapped out and see if it helps. So let's check it out. So I took this screw out. Like I said, I'm going to go ahead and just pull the servo. Then we're going to take out these screws on the diff case cover. Going to pull these out of the way, which are, of course, the 1.5. Now I don't have any problem getting to all these screws. So we have a bearing on this side. Is that a bearing or a bushing? Probably a bushing. Yeah. So why in the world they go bushings? It's beyond me. Save a penny per truck, I guess. So we're gonna go with the bearing. Another bushing inside. So there's another bushing inside there. I just took the drive shaft loose and kind of screwed the worm gear out of there. Just turned it to come out. Another bushing. Okay, so the bearings you're gonna need. This one is a 6 on the outside diameter. Should be a 3 on the inside, and then a 2.5 here. Yeah, 2.5 on your thickness. That's the one that goes in here. The one that's on the inside, on the back of the worm gear, and you can see this is the Tetra worm gear. This is the SCX24 worm gear. You see there's a little difference in the length. But we're gonna try this because it looks like almost the same thread, maybe reversed. So if anything, we'll have to do both and then we may have to switch our motor direction. And then the bushing that's on the inside here is a little bit bigger. So it's a 7 outside. And then 4 on the inside, and then 2.5. So I'll link those in the description so you know what to get. I didn't have any of these, so we're just gonna throw this in there because I didn't know I didn't have any on hand, and we're already in here. So we're gonna try this worm gear here. There's bushings in here also. So they're the smaller ones. I pulled those out, put bearings in, but the difference in this gear is just a tiny bit of thickness here. You know, this one's around the 4.75 mark probably. And this is a Treal Overdrive gear, the 14 tooth, and it's around the 4.5. Let's see how much slop is in there when we put this together. There's a little bit of gap in there. I don't really feel it. Let's put it together like this, see what happens. There is some slop in there, you can see. Let's see what it does with the gear in here. I guess I'll go ahead and grease these. Okay, so I successfully put the Treal Overdrive in the front, and it seems to be fine. Now we do have to do the rear, so I'm going to put a set of stock SCX24 gears in the rear, because you'll see we're turning against each other. I'm getting a little bit of drag in the front, and I think it's because this back bushing, I need that bearing in there because the SCX24 gear lays on a bearing, and I think it's just kind of binding on that bushing. I probably should have left that rubber O-ring off, because it against the bushing that's not turning, I think is probably causing that little bit of bind. But honestly, I think it's as smooth as the stock Tetra setup, because with those bushings in there, it's not great. So we're going to change out the rear and just put a stock SCX24 gear set in there. You can see this is the stock Tetra set, and there's a little bit of play in there. So honestly, I don't think it's anything to do with those gears being, that gear there being just a little thinner, because you get that play anyways. So I think it's gonna work. We're gonna find out. So here's kind of what I'm talking about on the front. The SCX24 has those little rubber O-rings up against a bearing. And because I'm using the bushing for now in this, I'm gonna leave that out because I don't think it really does anything up against that bushing. I may be wrong, but to me, when that's resting against a bearing, it's able to kind of turn and not really just mar up in there. So with the bushing, I'm just gonna leave it out. And then once I get my bearings in, I'm probably gonna take this back apart and put that bearing in. But for now, I just want to see if this would work. So we're doing this today. Let's get it back together. You can see this is the SCX24. I need to clean that gear. It's an old one I took out. And that's the Panda. You can see the shaft a little bit bigger, but the gear is basically the same. I think I'm gonna try this gear with this Panda gear and just see how that works. And then on the cover plate, I did pull that bearing because I have those, swapped it, or that bushing, swapped it for a bearing. And I'm going to use the rubber O-ring on it and put this back on. And then, like I said, when I get that inner bearing, I'll pull this back out and put that in. So you do have to swap the rear gear also to the SCX24 gear here, because dummy me, which I'm just exploring and learning here, so they're cut the opposite direction, you can see there. So you can't just leave the Panda gear in there. So you have to change the full set of worm gears. So got that done. And I had quite a bit of binding. The only binding I was getting was in the front. And like I was talking about earlier, I think it's from that rubber O-ring right there. You can see it's got a, I think you can see that. It's got a pinch in it. It's where it's binding against that bushing in there. So just gonna take that off, put this back in, and hopefully that'll take care of it, because I took the front drive shafts loose, and just the rear, the way it is, I didn't have any binding, and it doesn't have that O-ring. I didn't put it on there. So we're gonna take this one off of the front, and hopefully we'll be set. All right, guys, so here it is. We got Overdrive. Not near as much binding. Still haven't went through the portals, changed those bearings, and then, like I said, I've got to get those inner bearings in and change those. But I've got this tape on here so you can kind of see it's close. A little bit of play in those portal gears apparently, but so you'll see here, I'm going to run this thing just a little bit, and you can see the Overdrive. So you see that one's all the way back around. This one's here. So decent little bit of Overdrive. I mean, honestly, it's at this point, this thing's mostly an SCX24, but we do have the clearance of those portals. And we now have a little brass weight here. I put some weights in these wheels to give a little more weight up front on this rig because it needed it. I'm probably going to shave this off, round it. I used to always run these, and then I got to where I really didn't like how they were hanging up all the time. I don't even bother putting the skid on there anymore because it makes it 10 times worse, it seems. So I'll just take the Dremel and round these edges, and it works fine. But we got Overdrive and not too much binding. This truck has a lot of binding anyways because it has those bushings and stuff in it. So we're slowly working on getting that out of there. But anyways, pretty good wheel speed on 2S. Let's go try it out. So the truck's doing pretty well. It's still got a little drag to it. It's a little bit loud. I may have to change out the pinion gear. I'm having trouble with it sticking to the motor. I've glued it a couple of times and it's just not wanting to stay. And I honestly think I'm just going to take this motor out and put an aux in. I just haven't had any motor feel like it has as much torque as the aux. Even this motor here, just sometimes it stalls out on me, and I've never had the aux do that. It's really the only motor, as far as the brushed smaller motors that I've had, that just grips and rips. So probably going to be changing that out, running these mudslingers and everything on this truck. So going to be doing that soon. My runtime was cut a little short because you'll see in a minute the pinion comes loose. But overall, I think the truck's getting better. I get all the bearings swapped out. It'll be much better, and having fun playing around with it. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. I'll link everything in the description. I appreciate everybody. Peace.